chapter 1151, and we are gearing up for the biggest fight in the series to date. I currently have a cold, or at least what I hope is only a cold, which is kicking my ass right now, so that's great. And it is Eid, so Eid Mubarak, a time to celebrate, but also always keep in mind those not as fortunate as us. There was also the Netflix To Doom event where some new stuff, or specifically one character, was showcased to the world. Tony Chopper, who I actually think looks really good. He is cute, but not overly cute, you know, like some edits we've seen. The Detective Pikachu one specifically, seeing all of his gags as well was great. His dance after being complimented was the one that got to me the most. They framed it as an isolated video where he's being introduced as more of an actor, a cast member rather than a character, but these are promising signs. 2026 though, for the long term of this adaptation, 3 years between each season cannot become the norm. So it's a good week for Chopper, since he also puts in some work in this chapter as well, but starting from the beginning. The cover story, which does continue after the end of the pilgrimage, meaning it should continue until the end of Yamato's journey around the entire country, not accounting for any major interruption. This time Yamato is competing in a sumo match, defeating Urashima's brother in the process as Kawamatsu. The sumo master himself, the Yokozuna, watches on. And Urashima is the guy who wanted to make Kiku his wife at the beginning of Wano before she cut off his top knot and Luffy almost killed him. That is a question though. Do you think he ever found out that Kiku was actually a man? Maybe when the scabbards revealed themselves to the citizens of Wano after the raid? Do you think he was watching somewhere? Do you think he was able to put the pieces together? And back to Elbaf, where even more giants are being transformed into demons and the MMAs are still pouring out of Killingham's nightmare holes. So this army is growing larger and larger in number and in literal size. Dory and Brogy are making their way over to the village now to kill Yarul, while Kashi is pleading with them to stop. They say it's a time for a new era with no idols and no gods, so that's clearly referencing the giants' history, culture, belief surrounding Nika, and that very much sounds like Imu's own sentiment being echoed by these guys as well right now. So on the topic of the giants transforming, last chapter we saw 3 of them become demons by simply standing in between Dory and Brogy, who were themselves already transformed, which was a result of the Domi Reversi technique. And after last chapter I learned that this specifically references the Reversi board game, and although I don't know how to play it, I do know now that any pieces of yours that are caught between 2 opposing pieces will be flipped and become your opponent's pieces. They will switch sides, so that also explains the manner in which the transformation takes place. They are literally flipped onto Imu's side. So we are really close to saying that this is literally a game of chess. Not quite though, but this still does mean Imu is playing games with them right now, toying with them. We see the pieces on the board. I can't tell if that's just being shown for illustrative purposes to show how the ability works, or the game is actually set up somewhere with the pieces on the board. And it is mentioned the board to be covered in one color later on by Killingham, but that may just be metaphorical speaking as well. So it's funny though how we see the giants Kashi and this new guy Tormund, who I assume is also a member of the giant pirates. We see them talking as the pieces on the board. I do think that it is just being shown to make it clear what's actually happening here. So does that mean the way to undo this demon transformation is to trap them between 2 people from our side? It can't just be anyone. That would be way too simple. Like if Oimo and Kashi stood either side of Dory and Brogy, do you think those 2 would flip back to normal just like that? Or is the ability, the Reversi flip, a one-way thing? They can't flip back because this is Imu's power, and the way to undo it is something completely different. And with this the giants are freaking out, and their words influence the kids' nightmares, and new MMAs are created, while Killingham gives his signal by blowing a horn to bring the other ones back. And we see his hybrid form as well, by the way. His second hybrid form actually, because while the first one, which we are familiar with, has a human lower body and Kirin upper body, he now has this hybrid centaur form like Jax or Nusjuro's, where he has the upper body of a human and lower body of a Kirin. He has short hair, sharp teeth, which is probably thanks to the fruit, you know, the animal. Yet at the same time, the thing is that with sharp teeth, they're usually associated with fishmen, and knowing how the celestial dragons feel towards anyone who isn't them, let alone a fishman. That would be interesting if Killingham actually is one, because Gunko now herself is almost guaranteed to not be a celestial dragon. I think she was brought up from the lower world for experimentation as well. And we have Killingham, who could be a fishman, and Shamrock did try recruiting Loki, who obviously himself isn't a celestial dragon either. So I wonder what the criteria is for joining the group if all of this is indeed the case. Is the recruitment solely up to Garling if he does in fact still oversee them even after his promotion? How much input does Emu have in all of this? I would assume a lot. Maybe Garling seeks out the candidates and then Emu approves them. Anyway, Killingham says he isn't going to hold back anymore, and funnily enough, out of the 3 knights tasked with this mission, he's been the one who's done his job the best. He's done whatever has been asked of him with pretty much no problems whatsoever. Whether it was putting all the kids to sleep, spawning the monsters, burning the school and the library, he's the star student here. So I'm looking forward to seeing him personally get involved in the fighting. Also, I do like the mind games he's playing here as well, by saying the giants are basically causing their own demise because the MMA monsters are being created thanks to them, their fears. So it's mind games in 2 ways. Killingham's abilities reach into their minds to pull out the nightmares, and he's also using his words here to try and break their spirits further. And one last thing with this, but again with the giants being built up in the past as such a tremendous fighting force, on top of making them pacifists, weaponizing their fears is another genuinely great way to suppress them without it feeling cheap or making them look weak, because everyone fears something. Like when the giant warrior pirates' wives attacked them, it was so stupid but so funny, and it worked as a way to keep them occupied for the time being. And the same thing applies for all the other nightmares as well. Even the strong, the strongest, fear something. Cut to the trapped straw hats again, where Usopp is shouting at his masters, brought to tears, and I just really hope he actually gets to do something in this arc. Whether it is now or later, he has to take center stage at some point, right? Surely? So with the battle so heavily in favor of Emu and the Holy Knights, they want to push their advantage until the spirit of Elbaf is completely shattered. And once again, Harald's blunder, his mess up, is mentioned, something he did in the critical hour, which almost certainly revolves around the same incident as when Loki killed him. Maybe he told Loki the truth of what was going on, whatever he was doing with the world government. Maybe this blunder included giving Loki the legendary devil fruit. He didn't steal it. Whatever it is, it sounds like Harald in his final moments, or final moments as a free man, a free giant, he acted against Emu's and the world government's wishes. Then for the rest of the chapter, we go back in time a bit to see Chopper saving Gabon, and we follow what happens from that point on in the underworld, up to or near enough up to the present. So as expected, Chopper uses guard point and puffs up to absorb the impact of the fall, and we see Loki and Hiruden arguing about what actually happened to their father. You have Loki, who was actually there, but then you have Hiruden, who can only go off of what he's already heard, and Loki's reputation does not help his case. I mean, he wants Hiruden to kneel down to him if he wants to hear about what actually went down that day, so he's not doing himself any favors. And of course, every giant has their pride, but remember, Hiruden's dream is to unite all the different giant tribes around the world and become the king of them all, so there was no way he was gonna actually kneel, even if it was to hear Loki's account of what happened to their father. For 14 years, they have believed Loki did kill Harald with malicious intent, so from Hiruden's point of view, he's thinking that Loki's story will be full of lies anyway. They are all convinced they already know the truth, so there's no reason to put any weight into his words. And suddenly Luffy senses that Chopper just fell into the underworld, keyword sensed, because he didn't see Chopper fall, and Sanji says all he heard was a noise, and even Loki is of the opinion that someone fell. Obviously he wouldn't know who it was because he and Chopper haven't had the privilege of meeting yet, and he points beyond the mountains. Back to Luffy, he questions how he even knew it was Chopper, and he sensed Gabon as well, knowing that there was an injured man with Chopper, although he couldn't specifically identify him. So I can't keep track of all the observation haki feats in the story, but to the best of my knowledge, when a character senses someone else, they sense their presence but can't tell who the person actually is. Usopp kind of did when he identified Luffy in Dressrosa by the silhouette he could make out, but he was heavily concentrating on that specific point of the castle. While with Luffy here, here, it looks like he straight up just knew instantly that it was Chopper without even looking in that direction. Off the top of my head, the only times I can think of when they can tell who the person is when that person is emitting their haki, like when Luffy felt and identified Shanks' haki in Wano. Although the key difference here is obviously the fact that Shanks was actively outputting his Conqueror's haki, while Chopper, he was doing no such thing, he was just falling. So Luffy's observation haki is becoming strong enough as to where he can identify certain people from far away. I'm guessing people he is close with, spent a lot of time with, familiar with, that kind of thing, like Chopper, which is why he was able to single him out. So this is a new application of observation haki. Observation is by far, I think, the most diverse out of the three. I know it's a topic of debate over how haki isn't completely 100% defined. Personally, I like it that way because it leaves the power system open to new developments like this one, where it still works alongside what's already been established. For example, this is just a theory, but there's the idea that Usopp in the future will be able to make people see false futures, the liar of observation. You see how cool that sounds? I prefer haki being a more open system because of how many different directions it can go in. So Luffy has unlocked a new application of observation haki, and him along with Zoro and Sanji go to the crash site to find Chopper and Gaban. Back to Loki now, who receives a call from his mystery friend Mosa, or Shaggy as the official says, and this is the first time we've heard from her since the first time she was on call with Loki in chapter 1134. And just for future context reference, I guess, based on the way she spoke to Loki before, I'm under the impression that Mosa is a girl, and this time she is thanking him for something we don't know about, and she says that she won't be able to call him again, for a while at least. So to try and work out what that thing is, I'll combine this with a theory that discusses what happened when Harald was killed. Last chapter I mentioned that Imu may have used these same demon techniques on Harald and the 100 giants in the castle that day, forcing Loki to kill them all. So what if Mosa was in the castle that day, because it's been noted that the honorific ko, which Loki used when referring to her, could signify a level of status. So that would make sense, it would line up with her being in the castle. What if Loki saved her from one of those demonized giants and she has carried that with her this whole time? That is the traumatic experience she was talking about, and for whatever reason she hasn't told Loki about it directly, that he saved her. From my point of view at least, it doesn't seem like Loki knows this traumatic experience in detail, maybe to conceal her true identity in case someone found out about the calls that she is in contact with Loki. But that is why she is thanking him now for saving her back then, even though she isn't explicitly telling him that. And as for the reason why she won't be able to call him again, I think it's either because Imu is currently raising hell up above in the sun world, so she thinks she is going to die, or on top of calling Loki, she also keeps tabs on him from afar, so she knows Luffy and everyone are down there with him. So maybe she's saying this because the next time they'll talk will be face to face when Loki is free. He says that place, which could be the castle because that's where the incident happened, but it seems like something more than that. What if Mosa isn't even a giant? What if she's not even on Elbaf? We know Loki went out to sea, so what if someone from another island entirely was intrigued by him, or something happened for them to grow fond of him, so much so that they would go through the trouble of setting up this transponder snail so they could talk? Maybe this place is on Elbaf. What if it's something to do with the heaven world? I don't know, we don't know anything about that place yet, so it's still a possibility. What if Mosa is a celestial dragon, because we know that Marijwa is in flames right now, so maybe on his travels he ran into a world government ship. That seems like a perfectly reasonable reason for why she wouldn't be able to call him. Or a slave maybe. In that case I don't know how she would call him, but remember how resourceful Ginny was on God Valley, so anything's possible. As always, there's too many possibilities and not enough information. And Gerd, half jokingly and half genuinely I think, says it's nice that he's found a friend, and with her I feel like this is a nothing point to make, like there's nothing here to read into, but I like how she just talks, you know, like how with Road she straight up tells him you're a freak, a weirdo, I don't want to be near you. And with Loki she seems to talk to him without any fear whatsoever. How blunt she is, I think, is what I'm trying to say. I like how blunt she is towards her peers at least, because remember she does get a bit over overwhelmed by regular sized little people because she finds them cute. So Chopper and Gabon are able to meet up with everyone, or rather Luffy and everyone else found them, and finally the others find out that Yasan is in actual fact Scopper Gabon of the Roger Pirates. And when Hirudin says he was the third strongest member of that crew, he is quick to correct him even in his injured state by putting up two fingers and saying he was the second strongest, the number 2. So there is a bit of a rivalry going on there, like Zoro and Sanji's, but I'm sure it was nowhere near as extreme since we did see him and Rayleigh ready to fight side by side against Oden, no arguing, no bickering, so I'm sure it was much more of a friendly competition between Gabon and Rayleigh. And no shock, Luffy is again freaking out about the fact that this means Gabon knows Shanks, so I would like, after all this fighting is done, to have a sit down with Gabon just to talk, like with Rayleigh, how he spoke to the crew on Sabaody in Shaki's bar. Chopper explains everything that has happened with the kids being kidnapped and such, and all the monsters as well, and we reach the point in time where Imu unleashes that wave of Conqueror's Haki which everyone is able to sense. So Imu's Haki was felt across the entire island, so now it's clearly comparable to Joyboy's Haki blast, and Luffy says he understands now what is going on. Obviously any blast of Conqueror's would be more than enough to put him on alert, but on top of that, with Gabon in the state he's in, it's very clear that whatever is going on up there is very bad news, very bad news. But adding to this, remember when Emeth unleashed Joyboy's Conqueror's Haki back on Egghead and pushed the elders back and helped everyone escape? Dory mentioned that he didn't sense any hostility from that Haki, so I would like to think that Luffy in this scenario on Elbaf can sense some massive levels of hostility coming from Imu's Haki, which is another reason why he said he understands what is going on. And with him being thousands of meters below in the underworld, that's a testament to him being able to sense it. All in all, it is just very reassuring that he says he understands what is going on, he is ready, it's a quiet confidence. And while everyone else is a bit flustered and getting ready to go back up to the Sun World, the chapter ends with Loki laughing, noting how strong that Haki was and saying that they will need his strength for this fight. So even in this state, he seems to have full confidence in his capabilities. And even better, his several month recovery time may be cut short massively because the best doctor in the world, Tony Chopper, is now here and he could help with his recovery massively. So this really is a good time to be a Chopper fan. So next chapter will most likely show more of Imu just completely taking over, and the situation will be at its worst, the morale at an all-time low for this fight, and it only makes sense for next chapter to end with an incredible double-page spread of Luffy, Loki, Zoro, Sanji, Hirudin and his crew all arriving back up into the Sun World. I can already imagine it. I'm picturing something similar to how the Rocks Pirates were shown in chapter 1096. Just this massive entrance that attracts everyone's attention, and all I am hoping for with this is that Luffy will unleash his own Conqueror's Haki, just so we can see how Imu reacts to it, whether they will be trembling again just like last time with Joyboys, or if it will be something more foreboding, as if they've been expecting this, they've been waiting for this time, since they took the initiative to move to Elbaf first. And this does mean we will finally get to see the abilities of this legendary devil fruit which Loki has the powers of, which I think surely will be, in terms of strength or something, it will be comparable to Luffy's fruit, and I would say Imu's as well, but we still don't know if those abilities are courtesy of a devil fruit or not. And to that point, on top of the immortality, we now need to figure out how to reverse this demon transformation. So there still is more to do than just fight, but at the same time, fighting is the best answer to try and solve these issues. And really seeing the likes of Imu, Luffy and Loki all sharing the same page, the same battlefield, is gonna be something else. Plus Zoro and Sanji, I assume they are going to be fighting Killingham and Somers respectively. Then where the heck does the arc go after this? Because the Loki Harald stuff still needs to be resolved, the Mosa thing as well from earlier. Gabon still has a role to play as the man marked by flames. It would be really interesting if we were to have this gargantuan fight in the middle of the arc, just for the rest of the arc to be more like lore dumping, preparation, training maybe for the final war, some more cuts to the outside world just like Egghead, I am not opposed to that. Although let's actually get past this gargantuan fight first, because it is surely not going to be like anything we have ever seen before.